Good afternoon. Diana, how are we looking on your end? Looks like we'll give her just another moment, folks. It's 3:21. We're just waiting for the go ahead from technical support staff end that we'll get started. So just hang tight.
Stacy, we're ready.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Diana. Except for that sounds like Kathy on Diana's screen. Oh, well, we've got excellent staff, whomever it is Diane or Kathy. All right, folks, it is Wednesday, August 18th. I'm going to call today's Public Safety and Health Committee to order. Thanks for hanging with us for what's been a long committee day, but this is our final committee. And I will do, as most folks can probably figure out, we are still meeting virtually, but there are lots of ways to continue to be in touch with us as we meet in this virtual environment. And I would encourage everybody to visit the city's website at ci.missoula.mt.us/webcasts. And this is the information central on how to participate in upcoming council meetings, see what upcoming agendas are, as well as provide comments on agenda items that are still open. And as always, feel free to drop us a note at council@ci.missoula.mt.us. That goes out to all members of the City Council. Or if you'd prefer, you can always give us a ring and leave us a voicemail at 406-552-6012. That voicemail gets digitized and sent out to all members of council. So we will encourage you to continue to be in touch as we meet remotely. If you're attending today's Public Safety and Health Committee meeting, you can, and you'd like to give public comment when the time comes, you can raise your hand on the Zoom feature or press *9 if you are dialing in via the phone. And all of that information is currently up on the screen. I will quickly call roll. Just want to make sure that, let's see, there we go. Heidi is here. So we have myself, Stacey Anderson is present, Mirta Becerra is present, John Contos is present, Heather Harp is present, Jordan Hess will not make it be with us this afternoon. Gwen Jones is here, Julie Merritt is present, Brian von Lossberg is present, and Heidi West is present. So Jesse Ramos is absent, as well as Amber Sherrill and Sandra Fasica. So that is all of our members. We do have minutes to approve from our last committee meeting, which was July 21st, which is when we allowed the grant from the Firehouse Public Safety Foundation to purchase the Polaris Ranger for the fire department. Are there any adjustments or additions to those minutes? Seeing none, those minutes will stand approved. We do not have any public currently in attendance for our meeting, so no need to call on public comment. We have two agenda items today. The first one being a resolution of intent to sell certain surplus property to the Stevensville Rural Fire District. And I do believe we have a presentation from AC Davis from the Missoula Fire Department on this agenda item.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Stacy. Not much of a presentation, just a resolution asking to be able to sell one of our type 1 fire engines to Stevensville Rural Fire District. They've offered us $42,000 for said surplus engine, and that is my request.
Great, thanks so much for that. Questions or comments from council members? Ms. Merritt.
That sounds like a pretty good deal. Just out of curiosity, did you get any other interested parties?
We had a couple, Miles City Fire and Sealy Lake Fire and Anaconda were all interested parties, and Stevensville came to the table with a very fair offer, and that's where that stands currently.
Great, thank you. I'd be happy to make the recommended motion.
All right, that motion is in order. Thank you, Ms. Merritt. Ms. Harp, I saw you had your hand up. Oh, did Ms. Merritt cover your question?
Julie asked exactly my question.
Great minds think alike. Okay, great. Well, we have a motion on the floor. Any further comments or questions from council members? Seeing none. Again, we do not have any public in attendance of our committee meeting today. So with that, Diana, can you go ahead and call the roll for the vote on this resolution?
Yes, starting the vote, Stacy Anderson,
Yes.
John Contos,
Yes.
Merita Becerra,
Yes.
Heather Harp,
Yes.
Gwen Jones,
Yes.
Julie Merritt,
Yes.
Brian Voss-Losberg,
Yes.
and Heidi West.
Yes.
We have 8 yeses, 0 nos.
Great. Thanks so much for that, AC Davis. And I'm glad to know that it's staying fairly locally. So hopefully Stevensville will get some good use out of that. All right, we have one other agenda item today, and this will be the bulk of our committee meeting today. We have a quarterly report from representatives from the Missoula County Community Justice Department, which they've gone through a rename. So they'll be talking about all of that. And I do believe we have Chantel Gaynor. I do see her as well as, and so I will turn this over to her to introduce this item and her staff that is with her. And this is an information only item, and we try to hear from these folks fairly regularly. I realize that with COVID and all that has taken place, we're a little overdue from our quarterly update. So we're excited to hear everything that you guys have been up to. So Chantel, take it from here.
Thank you, Stacy, and thanks everybody for having us. I do apologize that we are well off our quarterly updates. So just know that as we go forward, regardless of how COVID still plays out, we are definitely on board to get back into that quarterly rhythm. And one of the things you'll notice is we talk about the department with its new expansive view. You're going to probably feel like we're throwing a lot of information at you. And so one of the things going forward for these quarterly updates, if we want to drill into any one of the divisions or programs, we're happy to do so rather than just give you the full schmat every time. So joining me today, though, to give you the full overview is going to be Jenny Daniel. She is newly moved from position as the Just Response Coordinator to our Justice Initiatives Manager. And then Erica Ritzma, who's going to be talking about prevention and what we're doing. We do have a PowerPoint, so I'm going to pull that up, hopefully successfully. It's always a gamble. Let's see. You're seeing everything. That's great. I am sorry for my technical lack of skills here.
It might be helpful if you put it in presenter mode.
Presenter mode.
Mm.
How's this?
Oh, that is fine. We can see the whole screen and all the rest of we won't judge you for how many tabs you have open.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So the new department, who are we and why are we? So Community Justice Department was formed out of the merger of what had been Relationship Violence Services and Criminal Justice Services, which was housed in the Commissioner's office. The commissioners really wanted an opportunity to think holistically about the services needed in the justice system to really create a more just justice system. Victims and defendants oftentimes have similar needs from different perspectives. Sometimes that looks like behavioral health support, housing support, access to to other services and referrals. Currently, the Community Justice Department is going to continue to provide crime victim advocacy services directly. And the bulk of the services that are focused on defendant are really through contracts and partnerships with local nonprofits and other state and county and city departments. So within that, we've got 17 staff. Some of the ways that our department has changed is we've really made our administrative team much more robust. We're moving Quinn Ziegler, who had been data analyst in one of the divisions, into that administrative team. And over time, being able to really look at data throughout the justice system, how to make smart and informed decisions in every sector. And then Kelly McGuire is moving from the prevention manager into a grants and contracts administrator. And part of that is because of the sheer number of grants that we have, but also eventually being a resource for other justice services types of departments across the county in particular. So this would be detention, law enforcement, prosecution, et cetera, but being able to help support grant acquisition and partnerships. So the justice system is sort of like health. There's a lot of grants out there, and it really helps to have people who are expert in the area to help really leverage those resources. So really where you see the bulk of our changes is in the Justice Initiatives division. This is where both Just Response and the Safety and Justice Challenge work will be housed. Just Response will continue to focus on improving the criminal justice system response to victims of crime, particularly sexual and dating violence. This will look largely the same, except for we will be hiring for a new Just Response coordinator. And Jenny will be talking about that. This is a place that has always grown and changed to meet the needs, and that will continue to be true. And then the Safety and Justice Challenge is the MacArthur Grant, and this is really focused on how to safely reduce the jail population and address racial and ethnic disparities in the justice system. This largely relies on thinking about pretrial services, diversion, and then reentry. And again, Jenny's going to cover these areas. And as you'll see, we've got 2 vacant positions. One is the Just Response Coordinator, and then one is this SJC Coordinator. And then within these areas, we also have been a pilot site for the Public Safety Assessment Project from the state, and we'll continue to do that. The state authorized 2 more years worth of funding. This largely is on the county side. Muni Court hasn't been participating at this point, but it is one of those places that can always continue to grow to meet the needs as needs are identified or changed. So my header got cut off, but that's okay. So this is just to give you an overview of what the department funding looks like for FY22. Just over 50% of our funding is in grants. That is state, federal, and foundation. The state grants include the Victims of Crime Act grant and Violence Against Women Act grant that comes through the Montana Board of Crime Control. There were significant cuts to those grants this year through some funding decisions from the board. Good news, I have been appointed to be on this board by the governor, and it is one of these funding streams or some areas that I think that the board can really retool and think about how they're applying it so that we don't see big swings in funding. So hopefully by sitting on the board, I can help influence some of that decision. Our federal grants are large multi-partner competitive grants largely through the Office of Violence Against Women. This has been paying for services to our rural areas, helping increasing some advocacy at the YWCA Missoula, supporting services at First Step at St. Pat's, and a lot of training that is open for anyone who works across the justice system, law enforcement, prosecutors, judges, etc. And those are all focused on improving services around sexual and dating violence. The foundation grants, that does include the MacArthur grant, and then also a grant through Robert Wood Johnson Foundation that will be supporting some of our youth engagement work. Is largely some court fines that comes through justice court and district court. The city money that you all have been allocating towards us at one point included muni court fines. I don't know what happens on the back end on that side, but the city general funds at one point included some of that fine money as well. And then you can see the city and county dollars. The city dollars are really supporting 2 advocates, one who's focused on supporting folks who've experienced crimes and going through the criminal justice system, and one who is available for walk-ins and immediate services, largely supporting people getting orders of protection. In total, though, we do have 8 advocates, and they are working at max capacity. If we can figure out the dollars, we are hoping to expand that for 2 reasons. 1, to help with caseloads, and 2, to help build more robust victim or trauma-informed supervision. And so to do that, we need to have a supervisor who's not also carrying a full caseload. And then on the county side, what you're seeing here, and if for those of you who have seen this presentation before, you'll note that this is a larger number than what we've presented, and that is in part because of that merger. So the city general funds do support some advocacy, but also all of the administrative side of things, all of the operations, and the new justice manager position. So, you're seeing the effects of the merger in that total dollar. One thing I do want to say, and Erica will be talking about this more, one of the major changes to our structure, and actually I'll go back up to the org chart, is you won't see prevention on here. And the reason why is prevention has grown over time, and the way that sexual and domestic violence prevention started was telling people red flags. Don't date people who are controlling. Don't date people who call you names. And, it was like red flags lists were what prevention was. And then the field got smarter about it, became more informed about what's effective, what's not effective, started using much more evidence-based. And that's really where our prevention has been, is utilizing that. But what we've really come to learn is that proper prevention is really suited for public health. Public health has a lot of risk and protective factors in a variety of different areas, everything from suicide prevention to substance use prevention, that are really similar. And housing prevention with other prevention specialists in the health department will really strengthen it. However, over time, we want to make sure that we still have that strong relationship. And so we will continue to be in partnership around this, but Erica is now physically attached to and moved to the health department, and that's where her work will be homed. That being said, we will have her keep presenting her work within our reports. So you can see the full picture of what does it look like to be addressing these issues from prevention to reentry. So I will.
Excellent. Chantal, I hope, sorry, I should have asked this question before you got started. Do you want us to wait till the end for questions, or kind of ask as they come up throughout the presentation?
I think it makes some sense to break it into sections. So before I jump into what's going on with the Crime Victim Advocate Program, if you want to talk about that structure, the changes, that sort of thing, we can certainly do it now. I do want to be mindful of time and make sure that, we don't leave Erica or Jenny with too little time.
Perfect. No, I guess my question was just in regards to the budget. So the way you presented it, the work that Erica does is not reflected in this budget because she is now over at the health department.
Not exactly. So the city general fund dollars, the money that has been coming to our department is still in that dollar amount, and then we're transferring it to health. So that's how we're maintaining that partnership. Well, I mean, we're maintaining the partnership because we're nurturing it, but there's a financial component as well.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. Okay.
Any other questions on org chart, what we're doing, why we're doing it?
All right. I guess not. Take it away.
Great. So the Crime Victim Advocate Program is the first and foundational program for this department. It was established in 1985. And it has definitely grown and changed over time. You can see that just by the sheer number of people that we serve, that we are a busy office. The numbers that you're looking at are from January 1 to July 31. So this isn't quite a full year. Well, I guess it's 3/4 of a year. So you will see that roughly 2/3 of our clients come from within the city, and the rest are from county or out of county. And sometimes that's because people have just moved here and they still have an address someplace else. Sometimes it's because this is where they've experienced the crime. And sometimes it's because they haven't disclosed to us where they're living, but we're still helping them through a lot of phone contact or sometimes even walk-in. So we can have people who are just passing through, and we're still able to help them. In terms of the types of crimes that we're supporting people through, you can see roughly 50% of it is domestic violence. That includes dating violence, broadly relationship violence. The sexual violence makes up about 10%, stalking just more like 11%. Other includes assaultive crimes that are not sexual or domestic violence or intimate partner violence. That might include robbery or some sort of other, maybe assault with a weapon, but it was a neighbor situation. So other makes up about 17% of what we support people through. And then the Crime Victim Advocacy Program continues to have basically two sides, helping people through the justice system. We've got folks co-located with the police department, with the city prosecutor, with the county prosecutor, and with the sheriff's department. And about 10% of our cases are folks who are going to utilize both the walk-in and immediate services focused on supporting people get orders of protection and into other services, as well as that what happens when they report crimes. Just like all the other criminal justice work across the county, there has been an uptick in particularly violent crime. We've seen this both in terms of homicides as well as attempted homicides and very serious assaults. And then the last thing that I usually point out is the connection to strangulation. Jenny's going to talk more about the program side of strangulation, but strangulation is one of the signs of a high lethality situation in domestic violence. And we've seen about 47 in that same period from January 1. It's tricky. It's a common tactic in domestic violence because it immediately, somebody can immediately have control over the person that they're harming. And it's something that gets minimized and not talked about a lot and can have long-term impacts. And then the last part to it is it's very hard to investigate. It hardly ever leaves a mark. It is usually you have to have special training to really be able to understand how it works. And happy to report that the city and county have really been taking a deep dive over the last several years to be expert in this area. And Missoula Police Officer Detective Nate Greasy is really leading the charge. So anytime you can give him kudos, and Jenny will talk more about that too. All right, any questions on the CVA program? All righty, well, we're ready to move on for Jenny. Jenny, I'll keep moving the slides, but you get to be the talker.
Thanks, Chantel. I'll spend most of my time on this slide probably. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm Jenny Daniel. And thanks, Stacy, for coordinating this. I'm the new CJCC coordinator, the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. And so I am really honored to have this position and also really overwhelmed almost at the amount of work that's happening. And it makes me so proud of Missoula for that reason. So what I was going to say, so we've been reorganizing and because of the merger and staff loss. And so we had a staff meeting or a planning meeting early in July, and we went through some guiding principles and looked at our mission and what was the purpose of our organization. And so the guiding principles, some of them, I won't list all of them, but we believe in human dignity and that all individuals have value. We're really looking at, sorry, I lost the public resources, that they should be spent on effective research-based programs. And that we recognize there's a lot of inequities that exist in our system, and we are working to address those inequities. We also believe that it takes courage, I keep losing my place, to face the risks that are needed to improve the criminal justice system. It's really hard for us to look at what we're doing and really like look at the work we've done or how we might have served someone and how we could have done that better. And so we are all in this together and trying to improve the system for everyone that are justice involved. We're working towards more integration of the collaborative groups and projects through this coordinating with other coordinators. There's a behavioral health coordinator, there's the hospital work and coordination around that, and really looking at ways that we can work collaboratively within to be more integrated with the behavioral health groups and the CIT program and all of that. And so it's been really exciting to meet all these new people and see all the work that's happening. And really, I'm going to be working on improving cross collaboration or communication. I'm not sure exactly what that looks like, so I'm open to ideas. And so that's the reset of the CJCC, and what Chantel was talking about is the MacArthur and Safety and Justice Challenge, which is new to me. And I can't believe that I've worked in the field for 17 years. And I'm only now realizing just how challenging it can be for people that have been put in jail for crimes that, first of all, they're presumed innocent, but they are also nonviolent crimes. And is there ways that we can divert them? Do they have a mental illness? Do they have a substance use disorder? And how can we, utilize the jail for what it's meant for violent offenders? So we are working, I'm supporting all of this and also hiring a coordinator to help me with this, but the community supported reentry program, and that's where evidence supports when individuals are held in detention facilities while awaiting criminal proceedings, even for short periods of times, they have worse outcomes. They can lose their job, they can lose their housing. There's higher rates of sentencing disparity and a greater likelihood for reoffending. So we're working to take people that are committing low-level offenses and getting them into services. We're going to hire a dually licensed CD evaluator, chemical dependency evaluator at the probation and parole office. We're working with a person, we're going to hire a Native American liaison that's going to be held at the public defender's office. There's a higher number of Native people in the jail, and only 3% of people in Missoula. And so they're way overrepresented in the jail. We have to figure out why that is. And so we'll be hiring we are hiring a PSA coordinator, the Public Safety Assessment Coordinator, and we have a site visit next week. So that's been exciting. We're trying to coordinate a bunch of meetings with our guy, Tom. And then on the just response side, last time I talked to you, we had just gone through a strategic planning process. And one of the things on the strategic planning process was addressing vicarious trauma as an organization, not just telling people to go take a bubble bath and do some self-care. And instead, what kind of policies and practices can we put into place? There's, vicarious trauma is really horrific, and our people are at risk of suicide, and it's just a really big deal. And as agencies, we have 9 or 10 agencies on this team, and we all have very commonalities. We're serving the same people and having the same problems, even if we have a different outlook on how to do that. We recently did some just response orientation videos. That was pretty fun. We worked with the PIO, the public communications officer at the sheriff's department, and she did a bunch of videos. And the idea being that when a new staff person starts and they get assigned to this just response team, they don't know what that's about. They can watch the videos and see what we're all about. And then so Chantel talked about some of the grant funds that send money, training money. We have a lot of training money to send people, and we sent in 2019, we sent 3 people to a Strangulation Institute in San Diego, and they came back and just started training people and doing all kinds of stuff. And they were able to start a strangulation pilot program. And then we are hiring a just response coordinator. And I wanted to talk more about the strangulation program. So Chantel, the next slide. Thanks. So you guys saw this slide last time, actually, in March of 2020. And that was the last time we did our update. And at that time, this happened in February. This is our last in-person training. And that's Detective Greasy on the left. And then on the right is Jacqueline Tourniquet. She's a nurse at First Step and at Partnership Health Center. I believe she still is there. And so I learned from Nate that actually they've trained 600 individuals on the importance of understanding non-lethal strangulation. And he's really worked to change policy and practices system-wide. And they worked to implement a pilot in July of 2020. And they're providing expert testimony. And he, with me, I supported him in this, but developed strangulation forms. So they're forms that can help law enforcement out in the field to ask the right questions and know what to do in the chance of a strangulation. And in some ways, I wonder if our numbers aren't higher because of that in some ways. And then he successfully lobbied to get Missoula Emergency Services to do a form of their own. And it's based on the police department's one, but then ask specific paramedics questions. And it's the first of the kind in the country. So that's pretty fascinating and awesome. And then we're sending about, I think probably 7 staff this fall to the one in October. We're benefiting in that they are going to be doing it online so that we don't have to pay for travel. So we're able to send a bunch of people to the training. So last week, 2 weeks ago, there was a major strangulation, and Detective Greasy got a hold of it. And the woman had gone to medical care, sought medical care, and they didn't come out with anything, but Detective Greasy, based on what he read in the report, and it wasn't a domestic violence related one, but he successfully called First Step and said, hey, can you get this woman in? And he convinced her to go. And the nurse saw him, and they have special equipment at First Step that can see more stuff. More stuff isn't a very good technical term, but I'll use it. And he basically, we think he saved her life. So she came back with clots, and I'll read what he says. I can positively say that the nurse through this pilot program saved this person's life. Over a year ago, the survivor would not have had this as a resource, and the outcome for her would have been a lot different. I'm truly so thankful and blessed for all of your hard work and the success of this program. And there were blood clots that they found in her neck, and that would eventually possibly cause stroke. And so it's a really cool thing that it happened in real time, and the entire team got to celebrate that they'd been working together on this and that they saved this woman's life. So I think that's all I have. Do you guys have any questions? I talked fast.
Oh, no, you covered a lot. I think we're still trying to absorb all
I
of it.
know. I was like,
no, I at the beginning, Chantel showed the slides of the different numbers. So I'm assuming and I think this is the first time you guys have really delved into strangulation to the level that, at least in my time on council. And
yep.
Given that it is such an indicator, I'm wondering in your metrics, because I would assume that they were all under domestic violence, but in the situation that you literally just highlighted, that wouldn't have been under the domestic violence tab for number of calls. And
right. I'm not sure that she came to our office,
Yeah.
So yeah, that she's not included in that number. A good metric would be to look at what law enforcement's experiencing as well. And I Nate did say that at one point, but I don't recall the number offhand. But he's been working statewide too and talking to other communities and learning from other communities.
Right.
But
Well,
yeah, it's higher than the number we have.
right. Absolutely. Well, and I really appreciate the fact that we are, once again, paving the way for some of the innovative programming and the cross collaboration. I think that that's just such a testament to the work that you all do and the kind of way you see the intersectionality between what you do and the Missoula Police Department being willing to participate. So we do have a couple questions from other council members. First in the queue, I have Mr. Contos.
Yes, I must be living in a bubble. So this strangulation is a pretty big thing. The numbers are pretty high.
Yeah, I think it's in like, I want to say 50% of cases. Chantel, am I right? It's like estimated. We don't know because it's not always reported. Does that make sense? But I know that it's really high. It's very, very, very common. And when I started, we didn't take it serious. We never, it was just something that people did. And, a lot of people would say he choked me, and that's the words they use. And so we've tried to change it to non-lethal strangulation just to kind of help them and get the seriousness of it. We did a brochure a few years ago that helps with that, but yeah, people don't take it seriously. And I'm not a medical expert, obviously, but there's no injuries frequently. So there's no bruising. In 50% of those cases, there's no bruising of any kind. So, people that have had that happen to them don't take it that seriously. And sometimes officers don't take it seriously because, or even medical providers, because, there's no marks. So it couldn't have been that bad.
Yeah.
And
Okay. Well, thank you.
one of the things I do want to add in there is it was actually right about 12 years ago that the domestic violence field started understanding the seriousness of it. And there's a couple of things that have happened over the years. One, there's a researcher named Jacqueline Campbell who started doing some really deep dives on how to predict lethality, because not all domestic violence ends in a homicide, but some do. And can you assess the risk for that? And strangulation came out there as a risk factor. And then locally, we had a city deputy prosecutor whose name was Judy Wang, who tragically was killed in a drunk driving accident several years ago. But she was seeing so much in her cases. She was focused on domestic violence. She was specialized. And again, like Jenny said, it just got so many victims minimize it. But really, it's a common tactic. And so as the field's gotten smarter about it, training's gotten more sophisticated about it, and then medical, law enforcement, and advocates have all learned how to work together on it. And it's sort of like everybody grew up together. But it doesn't mean that it wasn't happening. It was just that nobody had named it. Nobody was tracking it in the same way.
No. Oh, good for you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Harp.
Thanks. John, I think kind of piggybacking on you just a little bit, this kind of non-lethal strangulation happens so frequently. I know a 15-year-old girl who was sexually assaulted and strangled within the last year and a half, when a couple of years older than her. So it's like an epidemic. It's just, I think folks just don't know how to control emotions. And as we have found studies that, sometimes those emotions take over and people do some really awful things to one another. Jenny, my question to you, and maybe Chantel too, is in regards to Jenny, some of this work that you're now going to be doing as our Justice Initiatives Manager. You're going to be able to do more data tracking when people enter into the criminal justice system, specifically around socioeconomic data.
I will let Chantel answer that. We do have a data person, so that's exciting, but I don't know what all he tracks. Can you tell me, Chantel?
Yes. So Quinn Ziegler is our data analyst, but he's been on an extended leave. He's back in October. And one of the things that if he were here, I could hear him say is we can track and report things that are collected. And so a lot of times within the justice system, different data points are collected along the way. Some are shared, some are not shared. Some are in platforms that don't talk to each other. Some are in platforms that the public can't access. So it's oftentimes the puzzle is almost always how do we capture it rather than is this important information? And so if along the way, law enforcement collects that information, it would at some point be something that could be reported. And sometimes it's a change of practice. So an example from domestic violence world. So this was a story from Minnesota. They were tracking what happened at booking for people who were brought in on domestic violence. And a man was yelling and screaming and making very clear threats about what he was going to do to his partner when he got out. Very clear threats, very specific. And meanwhile, the person who's booking him into jail is like writing down, his name, his height, weight, that sort of thing, but also the contents of his pocket, which included a green plastic frog. And after he was through booking, the person who was shadowing and watching this is like, well, why didn't you write down any of those threats? You noted that he had a green plastic frog, but not that he was making threats that he was going to kill his partner. And the guy's response was, oh, well, we don't have a box for that on our form. And so sometimes we just need a box for that on our form.
Yeah, we do. I think it helps to, I think it would help start to dig deeper into the root causes of why people end up in a system that just seems to perpetuate poor outcomes.
Well, and one of the things for us to always be considering, like when you only have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. When you only have a jail, everything looks like a crime. So we need more resources for sure. And then breaking down the major drivers of why do people end up in jail? And I can't say for our system specifically, but what I can say major drivers across the country are, some of it's economic. Like there's criminal behavior that is kind of your job, right? Like you're stealing and selling things. So that's how you're earning money. That's illegal behavior. The root cause is financial and perhaps job training and maybe school training, those sorts of things. Some of it is behavioral health. You're having a mental health crisis and your behavior is unsafe. Somebody's called law enforcement and that's the intervention. But, jail doesn't stabilize you. Behavioral and mental health services are probably what you need. And then there is a certain group of folks, and it's actually quite the minority, who have criminal intent and violent intent. You think of it sort of like your sociopath. Those are very the minority of cases, but that's really what jail is good at dealing with, is how to isolate somebody who is not safe for society, and there aren't other issues that are going along with it. So over time, it is our task to dig into these issues and then help bring in resources or call for resources or support resources to create the services that fit the need.
Great, thanks so much for that. I guess talking about data collection, this conversation spurred on my question in regards to the intersection with the mobile crisis unit and the data collection that is coming from that resource, because I think that we're trying to get a holistic picture of what the needs are in our community are. And so I wonder if either one of you could speak to that.
Yes. Our department is from the county side of the county's contribution. Our department is going to be the point for the interlocal agreement and ensuring that as that information is collected, that it is shared, in that collaborative way. One of the things that I noted just in this first not quite year is they've already identified roughly 16 super users, and they're defining that as people are calling 3 times or more in a month. And so, thinking sometimes we invest heavily in a handful of people, but it actually is an overall benefit to the system as well as upholding their dignity. So, as they continue to track are there a handful of folks who actually really need more resources? But one of the things I know that they're running up against is if they can't stabilize somebody in the community and meet the need there, where do you take them? And right now we've got the ER and we've got jail. And so the Strategic Alliance for Behavioral Health, Terry Kendrick out of PHC is the coordinator, are really taking the lead on, okay, how do we develop a basically 24-hour stabilization center? And then Jenny and I were just lucky enough to participate in a call with Pennington County, which is in South Dakota, looks quite a lot like Missoula. And they've developed what they call a care campus, and it is a phenomenal option for their county. It's everything from a safe place to sleep, regardless of your status as housed, not housed, under the influence of substance. It's really come as you are. You can stay an hour, you can stay up for 24 hours, but safe place to sleep, and you're not going to get victimized. But it also creates the first touch with services and starts to build trust. Their law enforcement, who's sort of like their downtown, like our BID officers or even like our CAT officers, are plainclothes and out meeting folks and building relationships. Their services extend to detox, 3 to 5 day stabilization, and then can even work to get people into transitional housing. So good news, it's awesome. Bad news, it's really expensive. So they've been able to do some cost analysis and how much they are now actually saving. But the upfront investment was $14 million by the county. They had $2 million from a private donor, and they had some grant funds to leverage. So, the first bite is pretty big, but the payoff is pretty high.
Great. Thanks so much for sharing that. Love to hear more, but I know that you have other things to present. So call for any more questions on this particular section before we allow the presenters to move on. All right, great. All right, you guys keep going.
Great.
All right. Could I check in about time quick so I can pace myself?
Yeah, so we are scheduled to go till 4:45 today. However, I'm mindful of the fact that we started at 8 this morning. So I don't want to cut you short, want you to have plenty of time. But yes, so that we're at about so we have about 35 minutes of scheduled committee time left.
Perfect. Thank you.
I don't know how much time you were planning on presenting, but just as an overall time check. And are you the final presenter?
I am, yeah.
Okay.
And I've clocked myself at about 10 minutes of presentation. I just wanted to make sure we had time for questions too.
Great.
Cool.
Thanks so much.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Erica Ritzema. You will be hearing from me going forward about relationship violence prevention across the lifespan. There have definitely been some changes in the prevention program. We went from having quite a few staff members to mostly just me. And I will, I'm sure, be presenting more about some of those changes and what it means, and especially with the health department as I kind of get settled in there. So I wanted to start off by talking about program growth and learning. So, prior to the pandemic, most of our work was providing workshops in the community in person, and we had to do quite a bit of learning to get our lessons and workshops translated for a virtual environment. And I think even as the pandemic evolves and more in-person opportunities are available to us, some of that technological learning we engaged in is really going to help us whether we're in person or virtual going forward. And we're really excited about that. Additionally, we've learned a lot more about how to be trauma informed and how we teach. We know that when I'm in a middle or high school classroom or doing workshops with young adults, that there's a really high probability that at least one person in that audience has personally experienced relationship violence or witnessed it. And so this education will really help me be able to hopefully teach in a way that keeps those people feeling safe and engaged in learning, even when we're talking about hard topics that they've personally experienced. So we're really excited about that. And then kind of on that note, we've been just learning a lot more about adverse childhood experiences and trauma and how that puts people at risk for experiencing violence. and then how to connect that to other types of behavioral health issues. And I think this is one of the main reasons I'm so excited to be in the health department. We know the risk and protective factors for experiencing relationship violence are very similar to the ones for substance abuse, suicide, and other types of issues that the health department's working on. So by me being co-located there, I think we'll be able to really increase efficiency, collaborate better, reduce duplication, and hopefully have an increased collective impact across all these different behavioral health issues. So if you could move to the next slide, Chantal. Thank you. So in spite of the pandemic, we continue to do our youth and school-based work. In the last year, I provided healthy relationship and consent lessons to roughly 120 students. This included a pilot of a virtual in-person hybrid of Power Up, Speak Out, which is our middle school curriculum. So this pilot included me being virtual over Zoom and the students being in person. I don't know yet what the next school year is going to look like, if schools are going to allow visitors in the classroom or not. So I think this pilot is really going to serve us to be nimble and adaptive no matter what COVID risk mitigation schools are using this year. You might notice that that number is down quite a bit from previous years. Some of that is pandemic related, but I think a lot of it has to do more with changes in MCPS policy around guest speaking. They have been really focusing on increasing consistent and equitable education across all of the different schools in the district. And we want to be a really good partner in that. And so we've agreed to no longer teach 5-lesson curriculum in middle schools. We are still doing our high school stuff in MCPS, but not doing those 5 lessons is really impacting our numbers. At the same time, it's also really helping my capacity to be able to take on other types of special projects. In its place, we're moving towards a model where I am coaching and mentoring teachers to be able to teach this curriculum themselves, which I think is also going to be a much more sustainable model, because it's really difficult for me to be in 3 different middle schools that each have 8 different classes of health at any given time. So we have one more thing on that slide. Thank you. We have some really exciting upcoming workshops planned for youth serving organizational staff, including Flagship and Boys and Girls Club. One thing we know that works really well for preventing violence is if we can multi-dose education. So students are hearing similar messages from their teachers in school, as well as the staff and the after-school programs that they're in. And so this is going to be a really great opportunity to really embed that healthy relationship education at multiple touch points. All right, now I'm ready for you. Thanks. We've also continued other youth and school-based work, especially with the MCPS Student Wellness Council, which is made up of staff at the health department, as well as youth serving organizations across the county and city. One of the big projects that we're working on there is a social and emotional learning website. As a council, we've been curating different types of teaching materials and resources so that they can be in one hub for teachers to be able to access. And again, this is one of those places where being in the health department is going to be really beneficial, because for all of these different behavioral health issues, social and emotional learning is so important for preventing them. I've also been able to work quite a bit with Empower Montana and GUTS over the last year, and especially with some of their virtual offerings that they had. And I had one really great experience at a GUTS meeting over the winter where a 10th grader remembered me from her 9th grade health class and told me that we were the best class she'd had all semester. So that was really great to hear. Often when I leave the classroom, I don't get to hear afterwards like what impact I had. So that was really special. All right. Next slide. So we also continued our community-based work. We provided our trail crew workshop to staff at the Selway Bitterroot Frank Church Foundation. We always love doing that workshop. It's super fun. And then we had a new partnership that I'm really excited about, which is at Mountain Home, Montana. I provided 2 workshops to them, one on healthy relationships and one on consent. And during the healthy relationships one of the residents, who is a pregnant woman, was able to realize that something that she had experienced was abuse. And then afterwards, I stuck around and was able to talk to her about getting connected to resources. So that was a really great opportunity. And we're really excited to continue that collaboration. And I think this is one of those places where I will continue to work with the Crime Victim Advocate Program and probably co-facilitate that workshop with an advocate in the future, because there's probably such a high likelihood that someone in that audience has experienced violence and needs services. And then we are starting to hear from bars again, including the VFW. We're trying to get a bar workshop scheduled with them. It sounds like a lot of bars have had quite a bit of staff turnover in the last year and a half. And so I will be reaching out to bars, especially places like the VFW that have been such good partners with us, to ensure that their new staff are trained in our bystander intervention. Chantel, you can skip 2 slides. Yeah, thank you. So the Make Your Move social marketing campaign materials continue to be really popular. Almost every week I get a notification that a toolkit has been downloaded, or email inquiries asking about how different places can help implement similar programs. So that feels really great, that those materials continue to be so popular and relevant. Can you skip ahead one more? This is the one I'm really excited to talk about. We are in the process of planning a youth participatory action research project, which is quite a mouthful, I know. For a long time, our staff, as well as staff at the health department and other organizations that have worked with youth, have really wanted to hear from youth about how we can improve our services and make sure that youth voice is getting centered in that process. And we've really struggled to figure out how to do that well. Luckily, this year we have a grant from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation that's going to really help us get a project off the ground. And a huge part of that is being able to have paid high school interns who are helping us with it. So through the Youth Participatory Action Research Project, we will be hiring high school interns who are going to research the impact of COVID-19 on teenagers. We know that the last year and a half has been hard on a lot of people, and I think a lot of us are also particularly concerned about how the last year has impacted youth, especially at such an important developmental stage of their lives. And I think through this project, we will be able to hopefully collect some really great data about that and have youth really at the center of that process, driving decisions around what research topic to pick, what's important to them. Because I think oftentimes adults, we think we know, but we don't really know because we're not youth. You know, I haven't been in high school for quite some time, and so I don't know. I can guess, but I don't know what the last year has been like for young people. And so have youth really at the center of this project is going to be such a great opportunity to make sure that as we develop programs, services for youth coming out of the pandemic, that their needs and their voices are at the center of that. Through this process, youth will be learning a lot of leadership skills and also research skills. So they're going to be learning things like identifying stakeholders, learning how to engage in active listening, group problem solving, how to do research, how to do literature reviews, public speaking, and then how to plan an event or create products to publicize the results of the research. So I think it's going to be both a really great opportunity for the young people who are hired, as well as a really great opportunity for our community to hear from young people about what they need right now. There might also be some opportunities for council members to volunteer on this. One of the sessions that we have planned is a mock city council meeting, and I think it'd be really fun to have city council members participate in that role play. So you might be hearing from me as that gets closer. And that is most of what I have, but I'm happy to answer questions because I know I went through things pretty quickly. And yeah.
Great, thanks so much for that. And I'm sure that most of us would be more than happy to participate if called upon. So I see a question from Miss Merritt.
Hi, oh, thank you all so much. I'm glad I held my question to the end because I was interested to know what was happening with the Make Your Move program. And Erica, I'm happy to see that that's continuing on. I wonder if you would tell us what the acronym GUTS stands for. I'm not sure everyone here is familiar with that.
Perfect, thank you for asking. I know I'm sure like many people like kind of get into our like our specialties, jargon and acronyms. I believe it still stands for girls using their strengths, or at least that was the original acronym. But they have expanded their services to girls or gender diverse youth.
Awesome. And a follow-up, if I may, Madam Chair.
Yes, of course.
In regards to the bar training, I have been interested in seeing how we can keep expanding that. And I talked briefly with Jen Ewell, who has, I think, taken over at SARC on the campus, if I got that right, about requiring the bar training for bars that provide catering at university events. So I'm just going to toss that out there that I'd love to see that happen, but it's outside of the city purview to make that happen. But I'd love to see us when we're, no matter who is using those catering services, that those bars participate in that training. I think it's just an important way to get it out there. And I'm excited to hear about this youth participatory action research project. That is super exciting. I hope that there will be an effort to reach out to kids with disabilities or other folks who are not in the mainstream. I think that some, especially the students who have physical disabilities, were really impacted by COVID of not being able to, to get out and be in life for so long. So that's my 2 cents on that. Thank you very much, everyone, for all this information. We really appreciate it.
Great. Thanks,
Yeah,
Ms.
I
Merritt.
love.
Oh, go ahead,
yeah.
Erica.
Oh, sorry. I love the idea of working with Genuel on a requirement for catering. I will definitely look into that. And then I also appreciate the students with disabilities. I think a lot of our recruitment is going to be focused on Willard, but I think we're also trying to keep in mind how best to recruit all sorts of different marginalized identities.
Great. Thanks so much. Ms. Harp.
Thanks, Stacey. Erica, you mentioned something called adverse childhood experiences. Can you elaborate about what that is and why it matters?
Absolutely. So the adverse childhood experiences study was a longitudinal study conducted by the Kaiser Permanente Health. I'm probably going to lose some of the details, but it looked at 10 common experiences of childhood trauma. So things like having a parent who's incarcerated, having a parent die, divorce, substance abuse in the home, stuff like that, neglect, physical abuse. And they then looked at health outcomes across the lifespan for these youth, or for the participants in the study. And so they found that when people have experienced 4 or more of these adverse childhood experiences, their likelihood for negative health outcomes is significantly higher. And also they're usually at a higher risk for other things like substance use and incarceration in adulthood.
So it's not just about their health, but really kind of potentially what they can be or become as full-fledged adults, right?
Mm-hmm.
Probably ties into Jenny's work, I would imagine, too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, one thing I'll chime in here, it really impacts across the lifespan. And that first study was still fairly narrow, and because it actually grew out of a question around obesity. There was a program that there were some folks who were making huge gains and then having like a 180 turnaround, and like one participant gained almost 40 pounds back in like the course of 2 weeks. And when they started to dive into how come, it turns out that participant had a history of child sexual abuse. But when they really were looking at what impacts kids in that traumatic way, they came up with 10, but there's still others like kids who move a lot can be really traumatic. And that wasn't in that first study. So the field's really been evolving. The behavioral health and physical health. So it's everything from higher risk of heart disease and lung disease to higher risk of substance use disorder, and then being involved in the justice system, both as victims and as offenders.
Great. Thanks so much for that context. Erica, could you quickly, you rightfully so, being very mindful of time, went through the changes in the curriculum with your partnership with MCPS, especially around the middle school aspects. If you wouldn't mind kind of expanding upon that, because my takeaway from that is you were doing less in the middle school, but I'm assuming I missed a part of that. But given that's such a critical learning phase of life.
Yeah, so I will no longer be directly in middle schools personally delivering the middle school curriculum to students in MCPS. There's just too many classrooms, and MCPS really wants, if a curriculum is going to be delivered, they want it delivered at the same time across the entire district, so that if a student moves mid-year, they're not missing curriculum or getting it twice because of moving from CS Porter to Washington, for example. So instead, I'm going to be moving towards a model where I coach or mentor teachers to be able to teach the curriculum themselves. And then I think the other part that I skipped over is that I will still be doing this curriculum, just not in MCPS. And I think by not doing it in MCPS, I can focus on the feeder schools that go into MCPS high schools. And one of my goals is to really increase the number of incoming freshmen from feeder schools who are getting this content, so that all freshmen are coming in with that same baseline knowledge of healthy relationship education.
Great, thanks so much for that context. Just because I want to make sure it's still happening in middle schools and MCPS. All right, well, do we have any other, Chantel, do you want to kind of close up and wrap us up and give everyone a minute to think of any other final questions? And
Certainly. Well, just thank you again for giving us this opportunity to come talk to you all. I do feel quite badly that we've had this many changes and haven't been here to talk to you along the way. That being said, I am happy that we can talk to you about what the future looks like and really identifying areas for fruitful work and for meeting needs across the city and county. So, we collectively as a community have really been grappling with, how are we addressing racial inequities across our communities? How are we grappling with affordable housing across our communities? The work that we're doing butts right up against those questions. And it's then how are those communities impacted by what's going on in the criminal justice system? One of the things that I will say this last year, we have had so many folks working under unprecedented stress and shining. Our prosecutors are doing amazing work. Law enforcement's been doing amazing work. It is a testament to the resiliency of our community and the fact that as a community, we're still dreaming about how to do things better. And Community Justice Department is about that. How are we meeting needs before folks are in the justice system? And then if they are in the justice system, how are we ensuring that their treatment is just and equitable, upholding empowerment and human dignity? So it's a hopeful time, and I appreciate getting to show off this work.
Great, thank you so much. Yes, no other further questions. We continue to not have anybody from the public attending. I know I speak for my fellow council members. Thank you so much for all the amazing work that you do. Just because you haven't been presenting doesn't mean that we aren't aware of all the great work that you and your department and all the folks who work with you do. And it's just, you're right, it is a testament to what an amazing community we live in. And we're so thankful that you're here and you're doing it, and are happy to be supporting it in big and small ways. So with that, after a very long committee day, thank you everyone for hanging in with us. I will call today's Public Safety and Health Committee will be adjourned. Thanks so much and have a great afternoon.